Okay, well, here today, and we have Julia from Frack Action, right? Senator Carlucci here. We have the Craigs, the Craig and Craig, kind of like, what was that show?
I'm not sure that's it. Daryl and Daryl.
Yeah, Daryl and Daryl, but and then Craig and Julie, and they have been absolutely. Just so you know, I mean, they just came from Pennsylvania a little while ago. They're going back to Pennsylvania, and I'll be brief, but I will say this: this issue doesn't fit itself into a 30-second soundbite, and when you're dealing with a multi-billion-dollar industry that is able to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on TV commercials. This is an extremely tough issue to fight on the side of right when you're up against so much power. And that's exactly what these families have seen in Pennsylvania. I want to start by thanking Senator Carlucci for his leadership on this. And we have been fighting the fight for a bit of time now. But these families have certainly experienced the ravages of when hydrofracking goes bad. And just very quickly, last year was an extremely busy session, everybody knows that. And you would have those folks who would come from the industry, and they would meet with, they would meet with me. I'm sure Senator Carlucci has the same story. They would come and they would meet with me, and they would say, "Look, you can bathe in this stuff. You can water your lawn with this stuff. You can drink this stuff." And talking about the fracking fluid, and there are no problems with fracking whatsoever. In fact, it's going to cure our dependency on foreign oil, and it's going to cure your psoriasis at the same time. Okay, it's going to be the magic wand. And these guys, I got to tell you, I mean, they represented the industry. A lot of them were from Texas. I love Texas. When they looked at my boots, they knew they were Lucchese's from Austin. I had a personal connection. I thought, hey, these are guys I would trap shoot on the weekend. If they lived in my district, they probably would vote for me, okay? And then folks would come in and talk about the ravages of hydrofracking. They look like they voted against me twice, once in the morning, once again in the afternoon. They did not look like they're from my base, but they told me some horrific stories. And as a legislator, you're left scratching your head. And I said, I have got to go to Pennsylvania, and I have got to see this firsthand, because it was just so diametrically opposed. Julia set that up, and we went to Pennsylvania and conducted that tour. And I'm going to let Craig and Julie and others speak for themselves. But I'm going to tell you just quickly what I saw. When I went to Pennsylvania, I met with a farm family. They had 11 cows. There was a freshening, which probably none of you know what the hell that means. Those cows had babies. That woman was pulling 8 out of 11 dead calves out of that calf because of the contamination of fracking. I saw farmers that signed leases, and they did not become shillionaires. They were not making a lot of money. In fact, their entire lives were disrupted as the industry ran ramshod over their property even before any fracking had occurred. I met with a family that had a piece of property, I believe it was 3 generations or 3 generations. That piece of property, the first thing they did was put a fracking platform next door. If it was 700 feet from their bedroom window, that's a big span, on a neighboring adjoining piece of property. There was a diesel spill on that property that destroyed the family pond that they had been fishing in and swimming in for 3 generations. Not only that, when they went forward with the industrial process on that fracking platform, within a very short period of time, they could light their water on fire. But just so you know, the visual images of them having their water being able to be lit on fire is really the least of their worries. There were all sorts of contaminants then in their water. And the industry came forward and comes forward in Pennsylvania, and being a good neighbor, quote unquote, they say, well, we'll test the water. And they test the water, but they don't test it for what the hell's in the fracking fluid. And they consider proprietary information. So then you go, like these families did, and you bring the water forward, and you bring the test forward, and you say, look, you contaminated my water. What's the list? Strontium?
Strontium, barium, ethylene glycol, benzene, strontium, acetone.
Arsenic.
And
you go to the industry and you say, look, you contaminated my water. We've been here for 3 generations. They say, well, we didn't test for that. We didn't test for what's in the fracking fluid. And by the way, some of the stuff is naturally occurring. Sue us. Multi-billion-dollar industry. your property value is depleted by 90%. Okay? This stuff, I saw it firsthand with my own eyes, okay? And to the senators and to the governor or any others that say that some of this is overblown, and the industry constantly comes back and they say two things. One, the concerns are overblown and the statistics are overblown, okay? And number two, they say, well, this stuff is naturally occurring. I have seen it firsthand. I met with the farmers. I met with the sportsmen. I've seen the ravages of fish kills where pristine trout streams have been destroyed, where springs in the middle of nowhere that you would have used to have helicoptered into have been destroyed. And this, we all owe it to ourselves to make sure that we dig a little deeper into this issue, because even those folks that are pushing this so strong as a job creation and recovery plan, 5 years from now they're going to have constituents, many from their base, sportsmen and farmers, knocking down their doors because the water's been contaminated, the landscape has been contaminated, the environment has been contaminated, and they have been hoodwinked into contracts that are garbage, that need disclaimers. There are thousands of pieces of property right now that are being tied up throughout the state, and I have a little bit of passion about this. There are thousands of pieces of property right now that are being tied up, okay, in the state of New York without any of the protections that these families needed. And we're doing that right now. So I stand here with Senator Carlucci. I know he's going to speak. To say that at the very basis, when you look at this budget and the fact that the dollars aren't there to properly oversee this industry, the manpower is not there to properly oversee this industry, and the regulations are not in place to properly regulate this industry. And by the way, as a legislative body, I do not believe that we have the know-how at this point, because of the lack of interest of actually going to places like Pennsylvania, to put those regulations in place. This is that complex of an issue. So we're asking immediately that we pass a moratorium in both houses. We put the brakes on hydrofracking at this point. It will be introduced in a bipartisan manner in both houses. And I'll tell you, I'm always available. I'm very good at 30-second sound bites, not on this issue, because it is just too complex and too real. And when you look at it, this is all about why politics sucks in the United States of America. Because absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I don't care whether it's the White House or the governor's office. I don't care if it's George Bush or Barack Obama. It's the billionaires and the gazillionaires that have all the access. The Halliburton loophole was put in place absolutely by Dick Cheney. But when has Halliburton made the most money? Under President Obama. And the Halliburton loophole, have you heard about this? Okay? The Halliburton loophole was put in place because they knew that the gas industry would get red carpet treatment state by state by state. And they did. They got it. And Pennsylvania moved forward without putting the proper regulations in place and without putting the proper manpower in place. And that's why there has been devastation throughout that state. We have to make sure that that doesn't happen in New York. Dave?
Thank you. Good job. That was good. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here today. And really, we are here today to make sure we stop the nightmare that Senator Ball just described in hydrofracking. We stop hydrofracking here in New York before it begins. And I want to thank Senator Ball for really picking up where I left off last legislative session in making sure that we can pass this moratorium to stop this dreadful practice. And I want to thank the good people from Pennsylvania for coming all the way up here today to really share with us the nightmare that they've lived and to make sure that we learn the mistakes that were made in Pennsylvania. It's not worth a quick buck for the long-term debt that future generations will have to endure. And as the senator had mentioned, we are just really not equipped right now to deal with the regulations that will have to be met. The staffing levels in the DEC are down somewhat near 30% just since 2007, about 800 less staffers. The bottom line is this isn't a Democratic bill. This isn't a Republican bill. This is about protecting and safeguarding the drinking water for New Yorkers for generations to come. So again, I want to thank you for being here. And I'll be working in a bipartisan approach to make sure we do everything possible to stop hydrofracking here in New York State. So, thank you.
Craig will speak a little bit, and just so you know what he's holding. I was going to make a joke, but I won't. This is the drinking water from Dimick, and this is not, you're not just looking at dirty water. You're talking about contaminated water that's full of industrial waste that you wouldn't feed your dog. And actually, if you fed it to your dog in New York State, you could probably go to jail. Okay, I mean, this is bad stuff, and we will not know the effects of this. And when you understand that in Pennsylvania alone, they are taking 10 billion gallons a day. 10 billion gallons from the water supply every single day of clean water, and they pump it into the Earth's surface. 80% of the water, it's not water, that becomes industrial waste, 80% of that stuff that they put into the Earth's surface doesn't come out. So the question is, where does it go? A year from now, 10 years from now, 500 years from now, with seismic activity and otherwise, where does it go? And we know that because of the contamination in the water in places like Dimick, that because of the fracking process that goes thousands of feet beneath the Earth's surface, it creates a channel for this stuff to come back up into the groundwater and into the water supply. So I want Craig to speak specifically, Julie, speak specifically to your, to exactly what happened in Dimick. And I may interject every once in a while.
Okay. Hi. Yeah, thanks, everybody. These two senators are here. They are sticking their nose out there. They're putting their whole career on the line here by making the comments they're making here. They know they're going to be scrutinized. Do they know it? Of course they know it. And it's about time the rest of the senators and the House and everybody gets on this bandwagon about this fracking, because this is what happens to you from things gone wrong with gas drilling. What are you going to do if you go to New York City and contaminate the watershed there? What are you going to do? Put a buffalo in everybody's house? Are you going to have 6 million, 10 million buffaloes? That's how we live right now. We have a buffalo that's outside that they have to come and bring water.
See, that's one of the tough things on the issue. You're all thinking like the buffalo with little horns, right? He's got in his basement. You specifically go back and talk about what happened and what happened to your well, and talk about the buffalo, big container of water, and what you're dealing with right now, and how they shut your water off. All right.
Well, we first got contaminated over 3 years ago. It was September 11th of '08. And the gas industry, Cabot Oil and Gas, came in there, and they, after our first buffalo is a 550-gallon tank, and it sat on the back of a truck. It's really a cattle tank. That's exactly what it is. They put water in there and then ran a hose around my house so I could have water in my house, so I could do dishes, so I could do laundry, and so we could take showers in. They did that for a couple of months until it started to freeze up. Then they decided to put a big, elaborate system in our house, filtration system. So then after that, we used that for almost a year, but it took the color out of the water and made it clear, but it didn't take out all those chemicals and all those other toxins that were in there. And we used that for almost a year. What's the long-term effects? We don't know yet. Hopefully my kids won't have to find out about it someday when they get cancer or whatever. But that is criminal what they are doing to us. They have to be stopped. So what happened after the DEP, now here's a state DEP, took our well water offline because the filtration system wasn't working. That's how bad it was at our house. They took it offline. Now all of a sudden our state DEP is saying there's nothing wrong with that water. Secretary Hanger was a former secretary, said there was overwhelming evidence against Cabot Oil and Gas for contaminating the water. Where did all that overwhelming evidence go? You can't hide it somewhere. It's out there. The EPA came to my house and they said the stuff that's in the wells in Dimick is not, all the stuff in there is not naturally occurring. Sure, there's some stuff that's not naturally occurring, but the methane is the least of our worries. It's all these other toxins. Now we have a buffalo that sits outside, and as of November 30th of last year, after bringing us water for over 2 years, the DEP let Cabot off the hook by saying you don't have to deliver them water anymore. Now we got to go scratching for our own water. And I'll tell you how desperate it is. We were out on Christmas Day, New Year's Day, scratching, trying to find some source of water so we could have water in our houses. Other people were so desperate down there that they had to go to streams and ponds and pull water out of them and put it in their buffalo so they could have water in their houses to take a shower. Now come on, we are not a third world country. This is the United States of America. It's about time we stand up for what's right and do the right thing. Cabot took something away from us and we want it back. They took our clean water. They have to restore my water according to my lease, and they have not done it. So we are holding them accountable for it. And these two guys, I'll tell you, you know, I can't believe how they stood up for this, you know, against fracking like that. We got to get everybody else on board with this whole thing before it's too late. Once you go too far, there's no turning back, and we don't need that in this country, this state, anywhere.
Thank you.
Afternoon, folks. Craig Stevens, Silver Lake Township, Pennsylvania, 6th-generation landowner. My mother was from Oswego, New York. I'm a 5th generation there. 2 years ago, I moved full-time to my ancestral home and found out what was going on there. I'm wondering who was asleep at the switch. The state of Pennsylvania has abandoned us. You know, it's pretty interesting to have. Loved it when Senator Ball came down to take a look. His mind was not made up by any means when he got there, but when he left, it sure was. And what he saw was the truth. The letter they were talking about is John Hanger. That's a year and a half ago, telling that Cabot did this damage and they're going to have to fix it, put a pipeline in. Let's switch to last week. That's Secretary Krancer saying there's absolutely nothing wrong with the water and telling the EPA to stay out of his state. Here's the problem. How many times do you think Secretary Krancer has been to Demick and visited these people in a year? 0. How about Governor Corbett? 0. How about our own state rep, Tina Pickett? 0. Senator Gene Yaw? 0. Nobody in the state of Pennsylvania will stand up for us. So thank God we've got some great people here in New York State coming down. Guys, what are we doing here? The price of natural gas today is around $2 a thousand cubic foot. 2 years ago, it was $12 a thousand. I have a 115-acre property. Yeah, I'd like to get rich off my property, but if you live here in New York and have land and think you're going to get rich, think again. You know who's going to get rich? The guys you're signing documents with are going to keep 80+% of the royalties in their pocket. They're going to pay you on $2 a thousand, and they're going to sell it to Japan for $12 a thousand liquefied. You get none of that as a landowner. This is the biggest Ponzi scheme on this planet. It makes Bernie Madoff look like he's peddling Girl Scout cookies out in front of a grocery store. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Come on, folks, wake up. If you're a landowner and they want to cut your trees down, you're not going to do it if the price of trees is in the toilet. Those trees will be there next year like they've been there for 200 years. This gas has been down on the ground for millions of years. It can wait if it needs to come out until they get much safer. Listen, if you don't think it affects people in the community, they blew out a creek in my backyard that is my backyard 8 times in a row to put a gas pipeline in. And guess what? One of the trucks that left full of mud flipped over on my neighbor, John Jones's car, and crushed him to death, sitting next door to his 17-year-old daughter, who opened her passenger door and got out. They won't answer anything, but we know he had no commercial driver's license. We know the brakes were failed on the truck, and we know once he got out of the hospital, he left for Texas, and now they have a warrant out for his arrest, and they can't find him. Yeah, the jobs are coming to Pennsylvania. They're jobs of people who, the first sign of trouble, will leave. Well, I grew up in Southern California with that. The people that were not legally in this country would do damage, kill somebody, and they'd run right across the border and flee justice. We're not interested in it. We want our clean water back. We want our water to stay clean. And if you don't think it's going to happen, watch. You let this come to New York State, it's going to look like the Normandy invasion. These guys will come in with hundreds of thousands of trucks. Every city like Binghamton will be a thoroughfare for trucks. They're not bringing jobs, guys. They're bringing destruction. They can't prove anything to me as a landowner that they're in my best interest. I'm the one whose grandmother was signed in the nursing home at 95.5 years old to a 10-year paid-up oil and gas lease. Oops, she was only the life tenant. Do you know how many people in Pennsylvania, they don't even record their lease? So when you buy a property, you don't even know they have a lease till after you purchased it? Come on, guys. Senator Ball and the other, Senator Carlucci, are brave enough. These are the bravest people on this planet. You guys like Matt Ryan, the mayor of Binghamton. Why do we have to have the mayor of Binghamton step up for us and help us get clean water? Why do the senators from here in New York, obviously they're interested in what happens in New York, but they come down and see what's happening in Pennsylvania, and they step right in. The EPA, I asked them to come 2 weeks ago, and they were going to come with emergency water. They told us they were coming, and they turned around and went on hold. Now, we appreciate them even being interested in coming, but when the governor won't do his job, and the secretary of the DEP won't do their job, nor none of our representatives, they invited, if you're here from the industry, you invited the EPA to come into our state of Pennsylvania. So pat yourselves on the back. You're refusing to allow us to test. You're refusing to allow us to look at this seriously. And my kids want to be 7th-generation owners of my property. And as Senator Ball said so great on August 23rd at his Facts on Fracking hearing, My water will be ruined over my dead body. You got it, folks? These people don't own our land. They're here to take from us, and I'm not letting them take it. Thank you very much.
A few things on this too. If you look at this, there's a pink peace symbol on this. Oh no, wait, that's a Tea Party, don't tread on me sign on his chest.
And that's got an oil rig right up the middle.
There are a lot of Republican senators who should realize that it's the folks that care about private property rights, and a lot of Tea Party members in Pennsylvania that have seen private property rights be destroyed, that are the most adamant against allowing this industry a blank check. And just to go, because I know he speaks very quickly, but he has a 95-year-old grandmother, okay, as leases are being now signed in New York. 95-year-old grandmother, was she in her home or she was at?
She was in a nursing home when she was signed.
95-year-old grandmother in a nursing home. This is like something out of a movie, okay? That's signing away the rights to a multi-billion-dollar industry. Right now, that same thing can be happening in New York State without any protections whatsoever. So even those people that say, look, once we have the manpower, once we put the right regulations in place, if we don't have protections for the landowners, they're going to be hurt immeasurably by an industry that once again will have been given a blank check. The problem with Pennsylvania is that that Halliburton loophole allowed states to move forward without putting protections in place. So we do not have the protections at this point. And being so comprehensive and complicated an issue, we've got to have protections from the point of industry standards all the way up to contracts that are being signed right now, and those contracts that have been signed, whether or not we can now retroactively go back and provide those protections. There may be a host of issues that need to be addressed, and that's why there are a host of issues. We need a little bit more time. So I know everybody's busy. We'll open it up to questions, and if we don't have enough time, we can do one-on-one. Any questions?